Welcome to the Titans of Industry show. Today, my good friend and world-famed investor and speculator, Mr. Doug Casey, was behind the 1980 bestseller Crisis Investing and has had an illustrious career as a seed investor with some of the most successful natural resources businesses of all times, and a reputable newsletter titled Casey Research. Join us today. And I visited Doug in his Graceland resort in Argentina called Cafajate, and his playground, Punta del Este, on the coast of Paraguay. And I'm very glad that we can speak today. How are you, Doug?
Excellent. At the moment, I'm in Cafajate, Argentina, and we have a crystal clear connection.
Doug, tell us a little bit about what you've done in 2017, what you're up to in 2018.
Well, what have I done this year? I actually have to look in my diary to be sure. I went someplace interesting, but more interesting than that is what I have planned for roughly February of 2018. I know I'm going to the Solomon Islands, which may be about the most backward country in the world. And I'm going to do my usual drill, meeting with the prime minister and pitching him on a plan to turn his backward little country into the next Singapore. I don't expect to succeed, but I do expect an interesting adventure.
This has been called the most boring year for U.S. stock market in history. You know, you got historically low volatility, moderately low and stable inflation, virtually no downturn correction, and record after record for the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, the Dow. They're all going up, synchronized. Will interest rates, raising interest rates, and shrinking the Fed's balance sheet change this script altogether and usher in the top for the market? Or will it spark even more confidence with investors that the economy is growing and booming and fuel another year or two of this rally?
Well, look, I'm probably the wrong person to ask at this point, because this bull market has gone on much longer and been much stronger than I anticipated. In retrospect, I should have thought it would be a strong bull market. Why? Because these governments have been creating scores of trillions of new currency units. Now, where has all that money gone? It's gone into financial assets, stocks, bonds, and real estate. So, mea culpa. I missed that. But one of the reasons I did is that I find that as time goes on, I take a longer-term view of everything. And it probably has to do with my fascination with ancient history, which is most of what I read these days is either science or ancient history, not even recent history. And I'm afraid that Western civilization has been going downhill since about the start of the First World War. And that gives me a generally bearish cast to my outlook on the way things are developing. And I say that, Lior, despite the fact I'm very well aware of the fact that there are more scientists and engineers alive today, right now, than have lived in all of Earth's previous history put together. So it's good news and bad news. You've got to balance which is going to win. But to answer your question directly, I'm sorry to have given you the soliloquy, but I think the market's riding for a gigantic fall.
It looks like there's a battle between the insane advancements on the positive side for technology and the little progress that the human race has done in terms of wisdom and morality. Is that a good recap of your outlook and the danger that you see?
I think that's very accurate, as a matter of fact. And the problem is that the level of human morality and philosophical understanding has advanced very, very little over the last couple thousand years, while the level of technology has been advancing exponentially. And the problem is we're dealing with basically naked apes with technologies that increasingly can destroy the civilization they built. So, there's cause for optimism. On the one hand, the human race should conquer the moon, Mars, the outer planets and moons. Great cause for optimism. Great cause for pessimism. We may blow ourselves up first. Now, that's not an original thought. Many people have thought that for years, but I'm a fan of Ray Kurzweil, and he's promoted the concept of the singularity, which is to say all these technologies, not just artificial intelligence and computers, but biotechnology and genetic engineering and space technology and nanotechnology, so many things, they are advancing exponentially. And his opinion is that in 20 years, they'll all come together. And the nature of life on Earth will change magically. This is actually the most fascinating time to be alive in human history.
Can mining shares as an asset thrive so long as these amazing speculative gains are relatively easy to book with cryptocurrencies, and as safer gains are available with major indices going up 20-25% in 1 year since Trump's election? I'm asking you this because you've been around the junior mining sector and small cap investing for the bulk of your career.
Well, that is an excellent question, and I'll tell you why I think that's true. I was at a mining show. I flew up from South America here to San Francisco for a mining show that was put on about 3 weeks ago. And although it was supposed to be about mining exploration and mining, everybody was talking about on the panels. Nobody wanted to talk about mining. They all wanted to talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and this type of thing. Maybe that's the bell ringing at the top of the market, or more particularly for those things, but more particularly the bell ringing at the bottom of the market for mining shares. Nobody cares about them at all. So as long as I've been playing with this ridiculous area of the market, when I talk to real financial people, I'm always embarrassed to have to say that my specialty has always been mining and resource stocks, because it's basically a 19th century choo-choo train business where people are still playing around with big yellow trucks in the dirt. It's a little bit embarrassing. And in 20 years, we'll be mining the asteroids and so forth. So you can forget about putting most mines into production on Earth. But right now, this is a fantastic time to get into them because mining stocks are very, very cheap. There's been little exploration for some time in the cycle. So not a lot of new productions coming out. All the commodities have been in a bear market since roughly 2010, 2011. They're down about 50% typically from their previous peak. Listen, I think getting into these mining exploration shares right now should give us 10-to-1 returns over the next cycle, maybe more.
Doug, this is a time period that Wealth Research Group has called the last dollar cost averaging cycle for many years to come. Basically, and you and I both know this very well, we use this volatility, we secure massive positions with the winners we trust most. In my case, Keith Neumeyer and Amir Adnani, which I know you have great respect for. Then we short the sector by using one of the ETFs to short it, to hedge our bets and make money on the downside while we wait and accumulate a bigger position with the top quality companies that we trust that have a 10-to-1 potential. And then we just wait. We wait 6 months, we wait a year, we wait 2. It doesn't matter. A 10-to-1 asymmetrical bet is worth even 3-4 years, as we all know from Rick Rule's many stories about his 10 baggers and 100 baggers. Recently, you and two of the biggest legends in the resource sector, Frank Holmes from US Global Investors and Fiore's guru billionaire Frank Giustra, were on a panel to discuss your investment and involvement with Hive Blockchain Technologies. And it's the world's leading and number one blockchain money company. You probably have 20 to 30 offers on your desk every day to become a part of a project, a part of a seed deal. Why Hive Blockchain Tech? What makes it different?
Well, Frank Giustra is a very old friend of mine. And he invited me in when he founded the company. And basically, Frank is a genius. There's no question about that. And I could tell you the reasons why I think he's an actual genius, certainly when it comes to allocating capital. And Frank Holmes, of course, I've been a very, very old friend of Frank Holmes as well. And he's now the chairman of it. So most everything, not everything, but almost everything these guys touch turns to gold. And that's why.
No pun intended.
Yes. And of course, that's mostly where they've been involved. But I still own about 80% of my Hive. And look, it's a bubble right now with the Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies. That's the bad news. They've gone up an awful lot, a gigantic amount, an unprecedented amount. That's the bad news. But the good news is I think this bubble is going to get considerably bigger. And therefore, Hive, which is trading in the 330, 40 area right now, even with further releases of early paper and so forth, I'd love to see it go to $10. Who can tell? Look how crazy things got with the internet stocks. And that was a long time ago, 20 years ago now. So this is the first big bubble in 20 years.
What's amazing to me about Hive Blockchain Technologies is that it's a sub $1 billion market cap business. It's very, very cheap. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it's in hyper growth mode. And you look at the dominators in any of the tech sectors. You look at the routers. So you got Cisco, it's a $180 billion company. You look at chips, you got Intel at $200 billion. Look at operating systems, you got Microsoft, that's a $600 billion market cap. I can go on and on. Brand names in tech, dominators in tech, are huge enterprises with global reach, and Hive is looking to become the go-to institutional company. They don't get boggled down with any particular cryptocurrency. They mine whatever is most profitable and hoard it. So their growth story is practically endless. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, not only that, but these are very smart guys. And they're going to find other applications of blockchain technology and should be there in those areas as the firstest with the mostest. So I think that Hive is going to have legs, and it could run quite a long way. So I'm not anxious to sell my holdings at all. This whole blockchain area, of which the cryptocurrencies are just the first major application, is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And there aren't any blockchain companies out there right now besides Hive Blockchain. Now, there are going to be probably hundreds of them because people are going to be taking all kinds of frauds public. That's just the way it happens. But no, Hive is going to be a winner.
Is the U.S. as a country equipped to compete on the global jobs market of the 21st century? Ray Dalio speaks of two Americas. One for those who have the money to study the high-tech vocations and then get involved in corporate America with high-paying employment. And then he talks about the rest. And he says that the rest is 60% of the population now. What worries him is that the rest of the population, are tasked with work that can be easily outsourced to cheap labor zones or get atomized. What's the U.S. competitive advantage in the 21st century then?
Yeah, that's a $64 question. Look, the problem that we have already is that the rich are getting richer and at an accelerating rate. And while the middle class and below are sinking further into the slough of despond. Why is that happening? Because as the Federal Reserve and other world central banks, they're all doing the same thing in unison, create more and more currency, trillions and trillions and trillions of new currency units. Where does that money go? It goes to the people that are standing next to the fire hydrant of new money. People in Washington and New York and their equivalents around the world. That's why the rich are getting richer. And meanwhile, the poorer people are basically spending their time binge watching reality TV and so forth. They're not gaining the skills that they need. They're on welfare, bread, and circuses. This is a sociological time bomb, actually. And combine that with the fact that, this whole idea of gender politics, or shall I say, this cultural Marxist movement that's taken over the thought processes of people in the West, totally insinuated in every university, every college. All the professors are basically socialists and cultural Marxists. They're making everybody think not as individuals, but making them think they're a minority, or they're a black, or they're a woman, or they're something other than an individual human being. This is very non-productive. Jesus, I think I've gotten off the topic that you asked me about, Lior, but I think there's big trouble this way comes.
Doug, how will governments, in your opinion, manage the rise of cryptocurrencies, which pose a real threat to how societies are organized and how force and taxes are being enforced? Are they going to outlaw it, ban it, regulate it, try to compete with it? Bitcoin, in terms of circulation right now, is already the 5th largest currency in the world when you compare it to other paper currencies in circulation, not the digital coins, obviously. What do you think of this?
Yeah. Well, look, this is a real double-edged sword, because on the one hand, all of these governments all around the world are trying to eliminate paper currencies. So they love the idea of a cryptocurrency, because a national cryptocurrency. In other words, the US government, for instance, and people like Joseph Stiglitz, who impresses me as an idiot savant, high IQ, but very low practical and moral intelligence, wants to eliminate all $100 bills, $50 bills, even $20 bills from circulation. That means all your money will be digital. This is insane, actually. One reason it's insane, but the reason why these people like it, is that if it's digital and it's a Fed coin issued by the Federal Reserve or other national banks, they'll know everything that you have, everything that you buy and sell, all your assets, everything. You'll have zero privacy. You already have very, very little privacy, but you'll have none at all. So the governments of the world are going to try to go towards their own digital currencies. Very, very bad news. But I think that the average guy out there is going to think, I don't want to use the government's currency, because there's going to be no limit on the amount that they can create. I'll have no privacy. That's another reason why Bitcoin in a digital world could get bigger. And I'd also point out that 3/4 of the people in the world are unbanked. They live in countries in Africa and the Middle East and Central Asia and God knows India, that you can't trust the banks, and you can't trust the currency. The currency is worth little inside the country of origin and nothing outside. So all these billions of people are going to start going to Bitcoin. This is going to be huge because they all have smartphones now. After food, shelter, and clothing, the next thing they do is buy a smartphone. So, yeah, it's going to get bigger. And these governments are trying to usurp it. But governments are not the friend of the average man or anybody except the elite, the deep state members.
When it comes to precious metals, is instituting a modern day and advanced gold standard a viable path for governments to embark on and do a 180 on cryptocurrencies and move into commodity-based backing of their fiat currencies once more?
Well, look, I'm of the opinion that all of these paper currencies, these fiat currencies, backed by nothing, that all the governments of the world issue, they're all fated for disaster. They're all going to reach their intrinsic value because every government in the world is just creating them by the bushel basketful. So the world is going to go back to gold. And in a way, Bitcoin is an entrance drug, a gateway drug to getting people back into gold, because people are going to start asking themselves, wait a minute, why do I want to own these paper currencies issued by bankrupt governments when at least I can own a private currency which is limited in the amount, like Bitcoin? And then they're going to start questioning, I hope. The average guy is going to start, what's the nature of currency? What's the nature of economics? What's the nature of money? The average guy doesn't even think about these things, has zero knowledge of it. So there's cause for optimism at the same time as governments are trying to control every aspect of your financial life. And they're going to try to use these cryptocurrencies, their own, to do it.
What are your thoughts about peak gold and its impact on the industry and mining shares? By 2024, the production will be cut in about 50% from 2019's peak production. And it's not like they're discovering new gold deposits right now. So, you've been around this industry for a very long time. What are your insights into what's going on right now?
Well, I'm not sure. One thing that scares me about Bitcoin is that since it's a high-tech industry, there's an old saying in high tech with stocks, high tech, big wreck. Because as the technology evolves and changes, I don't doubt that they're going to come out with Bitcoin 2.0 or some other currency that's much better than Bitcoin. Bitcoin's got, the founder's advantage where everybody uses it, is accepted and all. That's hard to overcome. But if there's a Bitcoin 2.0 in any form, what happens to Bitcoin 1.0? And this is a danger. This is another reason why I'm a continuing big fan of gold and a continuing buyer of these little gold exploration stocks right now, which it's the only cheap part of the market. And it's a part of the market where there's likely to be a bubble. And there are lots of bubbles that are going to be created as they keep creating trillions more currency units. So we're going to live in a bubblicious area, one bubble after another, until the whole thing blows up.
Lastly, Doug, let's talk about your books. Your new book, it's a great book. I just sat around the sun, relaxed, took a beer, and I read it in a few hours. And you have a literary gift for these novels. What is your latest one about?
Yes, it's Drug Lord. Last year, we came out with Speculator, which is this is a series of 7 books that is reforming the reputations of 7 unjustly besmirched occupations. And Speculator, everybody's supposed to hate Speculator, but our hero, Charles Knight, shows that you can be a really good guy as a speculator. He gets involved in a bush war in Africa and child soldiers and all this type of thing, and uncovers a gigantic gold mining fraud. I really recommend people get that book. It's on Amazon, of course, or they can go to highgroundbooks.com. But this year is Drug Lord, where I try to show that you can be a drug lord dealing in both legal DEA regulated drugs and illegal, FDA regulated drugs and illegal DEA regulated drugs. In fact, the FDA regulated drugs are more dangerous. They probably kill 50,000 people a year. The FDA kills more people than the Defense Department does every year. But we show how to engage in the drug business, legal and illegal, and the effects and the methods of distribution. It's kind of a how-to book, in addition to being a thank you for saying that, Leora, a great read. And we're working on our third book. I don't want people to fall too far behind the series, which is Assassin, where we explore the techniques and the history of assassinations as Charles becomes a professional assassin. He's kind of pissed off having the government having stolen two fortunes that he's made as speculator and drug lord. So it's a morality tale. All these things are morality tales. It's a question of doing the right thing and so forth. So yeah, actually, I'm much more interested in this point in becoming a novelist than writing nonfiction, because there's a lot of things you can say in fiction that you perhaps best not say in nonfiction.
Thanks for coming on the show. As always, a pleasure. I'll see you soon, as we certainly will cross paths in 2018.
Well, Lior, I will look forward to it, whether it is here in South America or in North America or in Israel or wherever. It's always a pleasure.